Denver Broncos entering into the offseason, like a couple teams that we've talked about here, Bob, they kind of have already fixed their biggest problem. They got a competent coach.
Competent Hall of Fame coach.
Hall of Fame coach.
Hall of
Sorry, I'm
Fame.
underselling it. How can I do that? They went from a team last year that knew they had material deficiencies on their offensive line and basically buried their hand in the sand and acted like nothing was wrong. Well, it's glad to say that they are no longer acting that way, and Elway is recognizing this. We look at their key offseason free agency signings to this point. We brought in a tackle, we brought in a guard, we replaced our edge rushers essentially, replacing Zach Allen, bringing him in as Dermont Jones goes out. It's effectively a trade right there for those two. And we're seeing all of this recognition. We could not protect Russ. This is a team that has a lot of talent in it. It is a team that has the ability to cover the middle of the field defensively. It has a great shutdown cornerback. And assuming we're about getting equal trade off between Zach Allen and Dermont Jones, you're still going to have an above average pass rush. This team defensively is stacked. From a skilled position standpoint on offense, Judy is the real deal, and he might not even be the number one on your team in terms of receivers. Williams is a great running back when he's healthy. Obviously, the health is a major concern that we need to look at. But the linchpin of this entire team is Russell Wilson going to be able to lead them to victories, or is he going to stay in hero ball where he thinks he needs to score a touchdown every single play? And because he was able to do it often enough, he has it in his mind that he can, which he connected on many 50-plus yard touchdowns last year. It's in his ability. It happens. And he still throws one of the best deep field lobs in the league. There is no doubt about that. The question is, will he stop being on just auto chuck it down mode because he doesn't trust that he can get protection again? Or is he going to trust in a brand new rebuild offensive line and maybe hand the ball up every once in a while? So, Bob, that's what I see the introduction of this offseason with the Denver Broncos looking like. And I want to see what your takes are as we move into the offseason approaching the draft.
So, one of the most important shifts that happened for the Denver Broncos this offseason is trading for Sean Payton, essentially.
Okay.
I mean, you look at a team that head coaching and coaching in general was a definitive problem this year, and they retooled almost their entire staff. They brought back Vance Joseph as defensive coordinator. They picked up Joe Lombardi, the new offensive coordinator. And Sean Payton, when he was in New Orleans, this New Orleans team was a reliable playoff team. This New Orleans team with Drew Brees was phenomenal. Now you're saying yourself, okay, is Russ going to play hero ball? Well, Drew Brees is one of those quarterbacks that wasn't adverse to playing hero ball as well when the team got behind. But the thing about Sean Payton was that he could coach his way out of a box. I mean, Nathaniel Hackett couldn't even coach his way out of a plastic bag. I mean, when Sean Payton is the head coach of your team, you have a different standard now. Your locker room is not going to argue with one another as they did with Nathaniel Hackett. They're not going to get in fights because Sean Payton isn't going to allow that to happen. He's going to recognize when things aren't going well and work with the staff and work with the GM to fix that. Because let's be honest, their GM isn't that bad. He's been trying to make moves to make this team better.
Sean Elway struggled a couple times here, bro.
And you have to there has been many owners that have made mistakes.
Yes.
And the Denver Broncos are one of those franchises that we look at and say, this team should be better.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, they've been in a division where Kansas City has been rocking for a long time. They've been in a division where San Diego or Los Angeles right now has been a thing. And you're looking at Oakland, who knows what's going to happen in Oakland as well. And so Denver, we always say to ourselves, Denver's going to be good. Denver's going to be fine. Denver's going to make the playoffs because they're, the second best team but the issue is with Denver for the longest time was that coaching. And so with a Hall of Fame head coach and a quarterback that is a perennial Pro Bowler, you have the weapons to do the right thing. And Sean Payton isn't going to say, okay, guys, we're not going to run the ball anymore because this guy fumbled it twice in the last 2 games. We're not going to have Sean Payton say, all right, Russ, it's okay if you throw it, 6 times 40 yards down the field if you make one of those. That's fine. Don't worry. That's not who Sean Payton is.
Mm-mm.
And this is what we talked about with the Detroit Lions. When you bring in a coach that coaches in such a way that the players can get behind, your players become better. And
Yes.
when your players are good, they become great. And when your players are great, they become amazing. I'm not saying that Denver has great players all around, but the talented players that they have, he will use Cortland Sutton. He will use Jerry Jeudy. And he won't over-rely because you looked at what he did in New Orleans, continually having an injured Michael Thomas and finding guys to make plays and allowing Drew Brees to make plays. Now, am I comparing Drew Brees to Russell Wilson? No, I think Drew Brees is a much better quarterback. Mm-hmm. But you put trust when a guy like Russell Wilson has to feel trusted and has to feel trust in his team to be a better player. And you saw that this year, that he had basically zero trust in anybody on his team other than Jerry Jeudy, because you look at the first 3 games this season, he didn't trust Jeudy, he trusted Sutton. The ball went to Sutton more. Fantasy owners were like, okay, we've got to trade Jeudy. Then in the second half of the season, Jeudy was the guy. And Russell Wilson did this continually in Seattle as well, where there were many games where he would trust DK Metcalf, and then all of a sudden, DK would be off the radar and it would go to Tyler Lockett. And Russ needs to feel that sense of trust and connection. And hopefully, Sean Payton can bring his head out of it and say, Russ, you're not as big as you think you are. And that's what Russell Wilson needs. He needs a coach that's going to trust him and check him at the same time.
Well, I kind of have this expectation that he doesn't need to be told that, because he got hit, what was it, 120 sometimes last year? Just by not,
I mean, he got sacked 63 of them.
Yeah, I mean, so he's getting constantly hit. And this is where I want to break down the conversation about what this team is doing moving forward. So they earned the 5th pick overall, but obviously traded it away. When we look at the trades that they did in the middle of the season, ultimately bringing in another first-round pick that was San Francisco's whenever they traded Bradley away. And the reason I'm commending that trade is the defense didn't step back when it lost one of its elite totals. And knowing that you didn't have a first-round pick, even though it's going to be at the end of the first round, is just it's a resource that you need. And when we look at this team saying, what is it that we want to put on it? Aside from the offensive line, which I don't think we can say often enough, there's not a zooming, glaring need. And the skill players on offense, you're fine. I mean, Dortch is their weak point of their skills players, and he's completely capable of what you want at a tight end in the modern level.
So, and not Dortch. That would be Greg Dortch from Arizona, but it's Dulcich.
My bad, said the wrong one.
Yeah, yep. Dulcich. Here's the thing. And so, yes, they gave a lot up for Russell Wilson, and it was a first 2022, 2023, and then I believe a fourth rounder as well this year. And you look at the Denver Broncos draft capital this year, it's not that much. They're not going to be picking until the third round. They picked 68th, then 69th, and then in the fourth round, they've picked 108, 140, and then they have a pick
I'm
in the
sorry.
sixth
That first
and a
round pick is how they got
pick in the
Payton.
seventh. Yes.
My bad.
They have 0 first round or second round picks this year. Now, is that awful? Yes and no. Because it will allow your staff to say and to go after guys and be like, okay, I'm not going to look at the top of the top. I'm going to be looking here. And it's in this space, that middle space, where you're finding guards, tackles, linebackers,
The
defensive
Rams
linemen.
have built a team in that space.
Yeah, and the Rams, granted, they were bad this year and they could have a chance to do better in the coming year. But you're looking in that pool of players and you can get 4 guys in the third and the fourth round. You can get 4 quality guys that could make your team better, can add to your depth, can add to your rotation. And one of the things that happened to the Denver Broncos this year, as happens to all teams every year, is injuries.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at a team that rolled out so many players. And at the positions that they need players, there's going to be tackles and guards available that they will be able to look at. They already addressed that in free agency. Go out and get a couple more. Edge rushers. You're not getting the best of the best edge rushers in the third and fourth round. So maybe you don't look at that position. Cornerbacks. You can't go wrong with getting more cornerbacks. I always say that.
Not in the third round.
I think that's absolutely true. Linebackers. You could get a solid depth piece at linebacker that you can grow into a talent in the third and fourth round. You're also looking at running backs. They've trotted out 8 running backs this year. Maybe they find a guy that they like and could be the guy behind Javonte Williams if he comes back. And ultimately, Brandon McManus is old, and he's not getting any better. Kickers get drafted around the 6th and 7th round. You might want to go out there and get yourself a kicker that you can develop. Now, who do you want? It doesn't really matter because you're probably going to trot out probably 5 or 6 guys over the next 3 or 4 years. But does it hurt? No. You're drafted.
You're playing a lottery pick. When
you're playing a lottery pick. And so
sixth.
when you look at this team, one of the things that you have to look at is that you have to look at how can I build this team for the next 2 or 3 years while I'm dealing with Russell Wilson's cap, while I'm dealing with keeping Jerry Jeudy on my team, while I'm dealing with keeping Cortland Sutton on my team, while I'm dealing when Patrick Surtain's contract comes up. How do I keep him on my team? And you do that with drafting guys in the third and fourth round.
Yeah, this is the draft where you prepare for that. And that's one of the things with the Broncos that the record last year does not reflect, and you can easily gloss over. They have a very good nest built, with the exception of the offensive line and with the additions that they brought in the offseason here of bringing in Powers from Baltimore, who's an exceptional guard, and bringing in McGilchrist, I can never say his name right, Bob, from San Francisco. You're in the makings of fixing the problem. And it is not out of the realm of possibility to get another starting caliber guard or any interior lineman in the third round. That's where they tend to go. And you have the ability to say, hey, fresh start, better line, the rest of the assets are in place. Not only can we beat Kansas City at least once this year, we can make a run that can really blow some people up. Because in a lot of ways, the team imploded last year, especially on offense. It just imploded. And restarting with a fresh slate, especially if you can get the the stigma of what Russ created last year away and get rid of that, oh, you can have yourself a very good team. And to all the leaders out there, this is why you can't just live an optimistic world and sell the company line if you're not producing, because you can lose your team that way. And I do believe that's what happened to Russell Wilson in November, and it never really got better. So, Bob, I want to give you a chance to end up the final thoughts here for the Broncos offseason and what to expect from them moving forward.
I fully expect that the Broncos are going to have a better year next year. I'm not a Russell Wilson truther, but I do like Russell Wilson. I think he's better than what the product on the field was last year. The defense, when you bring in a new defensive coordinator, there might be a little bit of backsliding there. One of the things that's really important for Denver is that they continue to trot out good cornerbacks, because in that division, you have Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes. And you need to be, and granted,
Maybe I'll shut down Mike Williams.
Kansas City, hasn't had the best wide receiver run this year, and maybe not going into next year either. But Justin Herbert does have very talented wide receivers, and they need to be able to shut them down. You also need to be able to shut down Devontae Adams. Sure. You also need to make sure that you are ready for your division opponents every single week.
Well, Surtain does a very good job at that.
Yes, and so when I say, being ready for your defensive opponent or your opponents every week, particularly your division opponents, Sean Payton is going to have that done. That I have trust in Sean Payton that he's going to have this team well prepared. They were a very penalized team last year. They were extremely undisciplined at times, and you saw this coming out because the team had no leadership that was like, all right, guys, get it together. I mean, they were just over it. The team was over it. They gave up. But then in the last two games, you saw something. And so it was like, you saw, and it's what we saw out of the Detroit Lions after losing at the beginning of the season. You have a spark. You had something to pull your head out of. Now, is that going to make this team better? I think so. I think having a spark makes Russell Wilson's drive better. And when Wilson is driven, he's one of the top tier quarterbacks in the league. I'm not going to say he's close to Mahomes because he's not, but he is in the top tier quarterbacks when he feels driven, when he feels successful, when he feels like he's capable of winning. And I fully expect Russell Wilson to get back above 20 touchdowns next year. He's probably going to, the way that Sean Payton coaches, he's probably going to be closer to 30. He's going to bring out Russell Wilson's dual threat. He's going to protect Javonte Williams when he comes back. He's going to make sure there's a running game. I mean, like, you look at what Sean Payton did with the running game for the Saints. I mean, it was basically, Kamara and Ingram, and when one of them got hurt, he just replaced him with somebody else that was like, okay, I'm going to make this work. And the Saints' defense was pretty decent.
There were times it was elite, and there was times it was trash under him.
And there are times that the offense was amazing, and then there were times where they struggled. And I fully expect Sean Payton to bring that out. And if he doesn't, then maybe he's not a Hall of Fame coach. But I think he is, and I think that they could definitely turn it around. And 10 wins is not out of the question for the Denver Broncos with a good head coach and good leadership.
And the other thing that for people watching draft day to point out there, when they do eventually draft a running back, don't be surprised if it's Kamara type. Because Payton has always had one like a Kamara, and he got him late in the draft. So it's on the table, it's a possibility, and something to look forward to on draft day. Let's ride.
Let's ride.